Welcome back to Void of Fears, where the line between nightmares and reality blurs with every story. Our community grows stronger with each brave soul who joins us. We're 8,000 deep now, creeping toward our goal of 10,000 subscribers by year's end. If you dare to continue this journey with us, hit that subscribe button now. Leave your mark with a like. Share your own encounters in the comments below. Now, let's begin today's story. Dr. James Reynolds adjusted the collar of his specialized diving suit as he stared out the small circular window of the research vessel Oceanic Pioneer. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, deceptively calm despite the momentous expedition about to take place. As lead scientist for Project Abyssal Frontier, Reynolds had spent the last 5 years of his career preparing for this day, the deepest manned descent into the Mariana Trench ever attempted. "Final equipment check complete, Dr. Reynolds," Marcus Thompson called from across the deck. The young engineer was meticulously examining the submersible's external sensors, his movements precise despite the gentle rocking of the ship. His expertise with the revolutionary vessel had earned him a place on this historic mission, despite being the youngest member of the crew at only 28. "Thank you, Marcus," Reynolds replied, turning away from the window. At 45, Reynolds had established himself as one of the world's foremost marine biologists, specializing in the extremophile organisms that thrived in the most hostile environments on Earth. His salt and pepper beard and weathered face spoke of countless hours spent at sea, but nothing in his distinguished career compared to what lay ahead. Captain Morgan Walsh entered the preparation room, his imposing 6'4" frame filling the doorway. Despite being in his late 50s, Walsh moved with the confidence and agility of a much younger man, a testament to his 30 years of naval experience. "Weather report just came in," Walsh announced, his deep voice carrying an authority that commanded immediate attention. "We have a 48-hour window of optimal surface conditions. After that, a storm system will make retrieval operations significantly more challenging." Dr. Elena Volkov looked up from her station where she'd been calibrating sensitive oceanographic equipment. The Russian scientist had joined the team 6 months ago, bringing her unparalleled expertise in deep-sea environments. Her short blonde hair framed a face known for expressing little emotion, but even she couldn't hide a glint of excitement in her pale blue eyes. "The descent will take approximately 3 hours," she said in her subtle accent. "We should have nearly 6 hours at maximum depth before beginning ascent procedures." 6 hours to make history, Dr. Rebecca Liu added with a smile. The marine biologist had been Reynolds' colleague for nearly a decade, specializing in bioluminescent organisms. Her groundbreaking research had identified several previously unknown species that used light not just for hunting or evasion, but for complex communication. Just imagine what we might discover down there. David Parker, the communications officer, finished his diagnostic checks on the radio equipment. The former military specialist had been recruited specifically for this mission due to his experience with communication systems under extreme conditions. "All communication systems are green across the board," he reported. "We'll maintain contact through the specialized acoustic relay system as long as possible, though we expect some degradation beyond 30,000 feet. Reynolds nodded, taking a moment to look at each member of his carefully selected team. "This is it, everyone. Years of preparation, millions in funding, and countless technical breakthroughs have led to this moment. In a few hours, we'll be seeing a part of our own planet that human eyes have never witnessed before." Captain Walsh checked his watch. "Final boarding of the Abyss Walker begins in 30 minutes. I suggest everyone take care of any last-minute personal needs." As the team dispersed to make their final preparations, Reynolds remained behind, taking a moment of solitude. The pressure of leading such a groundbreaking expedition weighed on him nearly as heavily as the crushing depths they were about to face. His thoughts drifted briefly to his ex-wife Catherine and their daughter Ellie. He'd promised to call them before the descent, but found himself hesitating. What exactly do you say when you're about to journey to the bottom of the world? Eventually, he made his way to the communications room and placed the call. Catherine answered on the third ring. "James," she said, her voice carrying the polite but distant tone that had characterized their interactions since the divorce 3 years ago. "Ellie's been checking the news all morning for updates about your expedition. Is she there? Can I speak with her?" There was a shuffling sound, and then his daughter's voice came through, instantly lightening his mood. "Dad, are you at the bottom of the ocean yet?" Reynolds laughed. "Not yet, sweetheart. We're boarding the submersible in about 20 minutes. I just wanted to call before we go down. Mum says you'll be deeper than anyone's ever been before. Is it scary?" He considered lying, but opted for honesty. "A little bit. But that's how you know you're doing something important." "Take pictures of any sea monsters you find," Ellie instructed seriously, "especially if they have tentacles." "I promise," he replied, smiling. "I'll be back on the surface in about 16 hours. I'll call as soon as I can." After saying goodbye, Reynolds joined the rest of the team at the deployment bay where the Abyss Walker waited. The submersible represented the pinnacle of deep-sea exploration technology, its titanium graphene composite hull designed to withstand pressures that would crush conventional vessels like eggshells. Roughly the size of a small bus, its sleek design housed an array of cutting-edge scientific equipment, along with life support systems, for the 6-person crew. The boarding process was methodical, each crew member following strict protocols as they entered the vessel and took their assigned positions. Reynolds was last aboard, pausing briefly at the entrance to look back at the support crew that would monitor their descent from the Oceanic Pioneer. "See you on the other side," he said to Chief Engineer Wilson, who would oversee the surface operations. "Godspeed, Doctor," Wilson replied with a respectful nod. "Make it count." The hatch sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and Reynolds made his way to his station. The interior of the Abyss Walker was cramped but efficiently designed, with every inch of space serving a specific purpose. The soft blue glow of instrument panels illuminated the faces of his team as they completed their pre-descent checks. "All systems online," Marcus reported from the engineering station. "Hull integrity optimal, life support at 100% capacity. Navigation systems functioning normally," Captain Walsh confirmed from the pilot's seat. "Ballast controls responsive. External sampling equipment calibrated and ready," Dr. Liu added. "Communications link with Oceanic Pioneer established and stable," Parker said. Dr. Volkov completed her checks of the scientific monitoring equipment. "All sensors operational. We are ready to begin data collection as soon as we reach depth." Reynolds took his seat and secured his harness. "This is Abyss Walker to Oceanic Pioneer. We are sealed and all systems are go for descent. Requesting permission to deploy." Chief Engineer Wilson's voice came through the speakers. "Oceanic Pioneer to Abyss Walker. You are cleared for deployment. Initiating launch sequence now." The submersible shuddered slightly as the mechanical arms of the deployment system moved it into position. Through the viewports, Reynolds could see the launch bay doors opening below them, revealing the dark blue waters of the Pacific. "Deployment in 3, 2, 1. Wilson counted down. The submersible was released from its moorings, and they felt the momentary sensation of freefall before the vessel stabilized in the water. Captain Walsh engaged the propulsion system, and the Abyss Walker began its historic journey to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. "Passing 1,000 feet, Marcus announced as they descended. "Hull pressure nominal." Reynolds watched through the viewport as the blue of the ocean gradually darkened around them. Soon the natural light from the surface began to fade, and they relied on the submersible's external lights to illuminate their path downward. 5,000 feet, Marcus continued to report at regular intervals. all systems functioning within expected parameters. Dr. Liu adjusted the external lighting array, optimizing it for both visibility and photography. The water clarity is remarkable at this depth, much better than our test dives in the simulation chamber. 10,000 feet, Marcus announced, entering the bathypelagic zone. The descent continued steadily, each milestone announced with professional calm, belying the extraordinary nature of their journey. At around 13,000 feet, they passed the maximum depth reached by the wreck of the Titanic. At 20,000 feet, they surpassed the operational limits of all but the most advanced military submarines. 28,000 feet, Marcus reported. We are now deeper than any active manned submersible has gone before. Parker frowned at his console. I'm detecting some minor interference in our communication link with the surface. Signal integrity down to 85%. That's to be expected at this depth, Captain Walsh remarked. As long as we maintain at least minimal contact, we can proceed. As they passed 30,000 feet, the true alienness of their environment became apparent. The crushing pressure outside the hull, over 1,000 times that at sea level, was enough to compress their titanium graphene vessel by several millimeters despite its revolutionary design. I'm picking up some unusual readings, Dr. Volkov announced, studying her monitor with increased interest. There appears to be a thermal anomaly approximately 2 kilometers below our current position. What kind of anomaly? Reynolds asked, moving to look over her shoulder. A temperature increase of approximately 3 degrees Celsius relative to the surrounding water. It should be impossible at this depth without a significant geothermal source, but I'm not detecting any volcanic activity. Could it be an equipment malfunction? Captain Walsh suggested. Marcus ran a quick diagnostic. All sensors are functioning within normal parameters. The reading appears to be genuine. 34,000 feet, Marcus continued his depth announcements. We're approaching the previous unmanned depth record. Dr. Liu suddenly pointed toward the starboard viewport. Look there. Outside, faint bioluminescent patterns had appeared in the darkness, unlike anything documented in scientific literature. Rather than the usual blue-green glow characteristic of most bioluminescent organisms, these lights pulsed with deep purples and indigos, shifting in complex patterns that seemed almost structured. Are you recording this? Reynolds asked, his scientific curiosity immediately engaged. All external cameras active, Marcus confirmed, but I'm getting strange readings from the spectral analysis. These organisms, if that's what they are emitting light frequencies that should be physically impossible for organic bioluminescence. The patterns grew more intricate as they continued their descent, seeming to react to the submersible's presence. In some moments, the lights appeared to be moving alongside them, keeping pace despite the vessel's steady descent. The communication link is deteriorating more rapidly now, Parker reported with growing concern. Signal integrity down to 60% and falling. 36,000 feet, Marcus announced. We've just passed the deepest point ever reached by an unmanned vehicle. We are officially in uncharted territory. The bioluminescent patterns outside intensified, creating a hypnotic display that drew the attention of the entire crew. Reynolds noticed that the patterns seemed to be leading them deeper, towards the thermal anomaly Dr. Volkov had detected. Is it my imagination, or are these lights trying to guide us somewhere? Dr. Liu asked, voicing what several of them had been thinking. 38,000 feet, Marcus reported, approaching the estimated maximum depth of the Challenger Deep portion of the trench. I've lost contact with the Oceanic Pioneer, Parker announced, adjusting various settings on his console without success. There's too much interference. Dr. Volkov's eyes widened as she studied her monitor. The thermal anomaly is directly below us now, and it's much larger than my initial reading suggested. It appears to be structured. Structured? What do you mean? Reynolds asked. The heat distribution isn't random. It forms a geometric pattern approximately 3 kilometers in diameter. Captain Walsh frowned. Nothing that large should exist at this depth. The pressure would collapse any significant structure unless it was specifically engineered to withstand it. 39,500 feet, Marcus announced, his voice betraying a hint of awe. We're approaching what should be the bottom of the trench. Reynolds ordered. The external lights increased to maximum intensity. As the powerful beams cut through the darkness, what they illuminated caused a collective gasp throughout the cabin. Rising from the ocean floor stood what could only be described as a massive architectural structure. Unlike anything seen in nature, it featured towering spires of an unknown black material stretching upward hundreds of feet, connected by arches and bridges that defied conventional engineering. The surface appeared to absorb their lights rather than reflect them, yet portions glowed with the same bioluminescent patterns they had observed earlier. "This is impossible," Captain Walsh whispered, the professional detachment momentarily slipping from his voice. 40,200 feet, Marcus announced, his eyes flicking between his instruments and the viewport. "We've reached the bottom, and according to these readings, that structure is generating energy." "What kind of energy?" Reynolds asked, unable to take his eyes off the impossible edifice before them. "Unknown. It's not radiation, not electrical, nothing that matches our established parameters." Dr. Liu was already preparing the external sampling equipment. "We need to collect material from that structure. This discovery will rewrite every textbook on Earth." "Wait," Captain Walsh cautioned. "We should document from a distance first. We have no idea what we're dealing with." "I agree with the captain," Parker added. "Especially since we've lost contact with the surface. If something goes wrong down here, we're on our own." Reynolds considered the situation carefully. As expedition leader, the final decision was his. The scientist in him burned with curiosity to investigate this impossible structure more closely, but the responsibilities of leadership demanded caution. "We'll approach to within 100 meters, he decided. "We'll conduct remote sensing and capture comprehensive imagery. If everything remains stable, then we'll consider deploying the sampling arm." Captain Walsh nodded in agreement and carefully maneuvered the Abyss Walker closer to the structure. As they approached, the bioluminescent patterns on its surface began to pulse more rapidly, creating intricate sequences of light that seemed to respond to their presence. "I'm detecting complex electromagnetic fields emanating from the structure," Dr. Volkov reported. "They appear to be scanning us." "Scanning us?" Parker repeated incredulously. "Are you suggesting this thing is artificial? Intelligent?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Dr. Volkov replied with scientific restraint. "I'm simply reporting what the instruments are detecting." Reynolds studied the structure with growing wonder and unease. If this was artificial, who or what could have built it? How long had it been here, hidden in the most inaccessible place on Earth? And why were they unable to detect it from the surface? "The sampling arm is ready," Dr. Liu announced. "All collection chambers prepared." Reynolds hesitated, then made his decision. "Extend the arm. Take a sample from the nearest protrusion, but be extremely careful." As the mechanical sampling arm extended from the submersible, the bioluminescent patterns on the structure's surface intensified. Concentrating around the area, the arm was approaching. "I'm detecting increasing energy outputs from the structure," Marcus warned, alarm evident in his voice. "Whatever it is, it's reacting to our sampling attempt." "Should we abort?" Captain Walsh asked, his hand hovering over the retraction controls. Reynolds watched the sampling arm move closer to the black surface. They had come too far to turn back now. "Continue as planned, but be ready to withdraw immediately if readings exceed safety parameters." The tip of the sampling arm made contact with the structure's surface. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, a blinding flash of blue-white energy engulfed the submersible. Every system shut down simultaneously, as the cabin plunged into darkness, save for the eerie blue glow now penetrating through the viewports. The emergency systems activated moments later, providing minimal lighting and life support. The crew sat in stunned silence, the only sound their own rapid breathing in the suddenly confined space. "Status report," Captain Walsh demanded, his training taking over despite the unprecedented situation. "Main power offline," Marcus replied, his face ghostly in the dim emergency lighting. "Backup systems at 40% capacity. Hull integrity is holding, but most of our systems are non-responsive. Communications completely dead," Parker added. "Navigation systems offline," Walsh continued. "We have minimal propulsion capability through the emergency thrusters." Dr. Liu wiped away a trickle of blood from her nose. "Did anyone else feel that pressure? Like something was pushing into my mind?" The others nodded, each experiencing varying degrees of discomfort, pounding headaches, disorientation, ringing ears. Reynolds felt a sharp pain behind his eyes that gradually subsided into a dull throb. "Is everyone otherwise unharmed?" As the crew confirmed they were physically intact, Reynolds moved to the viewport. The structure continued to pulse with energy, but more disturbing were the shadowy movements now visible around the submersible, just at the edge of what their emergency lights could illuminate. Fluid, graceful shapes that seemed to be observing them. "We need to ascend immediately," Captain Walsh decided. "Manual emergency protocols. Marcus, divert all remaining power to propulsion and life support." "What about the structure?" Dr. Liu asked, gesturing toward the window. "We can't just leave without—" "Our priority is survival," Walsh cut her off firmly. "We can return with better preparations once we understand what we're dealing with." Reynolds reluctantly agreed. "Captain Walsh is right. Initiate emergency ascent procedures." The ascent was grueling. Without proper navigation, they relied on basic buoyancy principles and Captain Walsh's experienced intuition. The shadowy movements continued to track their progress, occasionally bumping against the hull with enough force to make the entire vessel shudder. "What are those things?" Parker whispered, watching the shapes through the viewport. "I don't know," Reynolds admitted, "but they seem to be letting us leave." Hours passed in tense silence as they slowly rose through the water column. The digital clocks on their emergency systems flickered between numbers, sometimes jumping forward or backward by hours, adding to their disorientation. Dr. Volkov monitored what few instruments remained functional. "According to the depth gauge, we're passing 20,000 feet. Assuming it's accurate, we're making good progress. The emergency beacons should activate automatically once we're within 10,000 feet of the surface," Marcus added. "The Oceanic Pioneer will be tracking us." As they continued their ascent, Reynolds noticed something strange happening to the water around them. Occasionally it seemed to shimmer with the same bioluminescent patterns they had observed on the structure, though fainter and more diffuse. "Does anyone else see that?" he asked, pointing to a particular patch of shimmering water. Dr. Liu nodded. "It's as if the water itself is changing somehow." Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the darkness began to lighten around them. "Approaching surface," Captain Walsh announced, relief evident in his voice despite his professional demeanor. The abyss. Walker broke the surface with a splash, bobbing in what appeared to be a calm, open ocean. Sunlight streamed through the viewports, momentarily blinding the crew after so many hours in near darkness. Their relief was short-lived. "Where's the Oceanic Pioneer?" Dr. Liu asked, scanning the horizon through the viewport. The research vessel, which should have been waiting at their designated coordinates, was nowhere to be seen. In every direction, unnaturally calm water stretched to the horizon. The sky above appeared wrong somehow. The blue too intense, the clouds too perfectly formed, and stars faintly visible, despite the daylight. "This doesn't make sense," Captain Walsh muttered, checking the emergency GPS system. were at the correct coordinates. Parker attempted to establish communications using the emergency radio. "Oceanic Pioneer, this is Abyss Walker, do you copy?" Only silence answered his repeated calls. Could they have been forced to relocate due to weather? Dr. Volkov suggested. Reynolds shook his head. "The mission protocols are clear. They wouldn't leave the recovery zone under any circumstances." "The emergency beacon is still functioning," Marcus reported. "If they're within range, they'll receive our signal." Hours passed with no sign of rescue. The crew rationed their dwindling emergency supplies, growing increasingly concerned as the sun moved across the sky at what seemed to be an irregular pace, sometimes appearing to pause briefly before continuing its journey, contrary to the steady flow of time shown on their partially functioning chronometers. "Something's very wrong," Dr. Volkov said quietly, voicing what they had all been thinking. "The physical laws themselves seem altered somehow." Just as despair began to set in, Dr. Liu spotted something on the horizon. "Look! There's a ship!" Through the glare of the setting sun, they could make out the distinct silhouette of the Oceanic Pioneer approaching their position. Yet something seemed strange. The vessel moved with mechanical precision, creating barely a wake despite its size. "Why aren't they responding to our hails?" Parker wondered, still receiving nothing but silence on all communication channels. As the research vessel drew closer, they could see it was indeed their ship, appearing completely intact. No damage, no signs of distress, just an eerie silence as it came to a perfect stop alongside the submersible. "Something's not right," Captain Walsh said quietly. "Where's the recovery team? There should be crew members visible on deck." Using the last of their emergency power, they managed to deploy the submersible's docking mechanism, securing themselves to the larger vessel. With caution, they opened the Abyss Walker's hatch and climbed aboard the Oceanic Pioneer. The main deck was deserted. Equipment lay precisely where it should be, but not a single crew member was visible. They made their way to the bridge, finding it similarly abandoned. Navigation systems running on autopilot, logs open on screens, coffee cups still half full at workstations. "It's like everyone vanished in the middle of their tasks," Reynolds observed, examining a clipboard that had been left on the captain's chair. Marcus checked the ship's systems. "According to the ship's log, today is October 21st. His voice faltered. "But that's 3 weeks after our departure date." "That's impossible," Dr. Volkov insisted. "We were only down there for about 12 hours. Parker accessed the communications log. "There's nothing here indicating distress, no reports of crew evacuation. The last logged communication was with us just as we began our descent." Further exploration of the ship revealed the same unsettling pattern throughout living quarters with personal items left behind. The galley with food half-eaten on plates. The research lab with experiments still running. Everything suggested a sudden departure of the entire crew, with no explanation. In the medical bay, Dr. Liu examined some blood samples that had been left in a centrifuge. These samples show unusual cellular structures, almost as if they were transforming somehow. More disturbing was the discovery that all external communications were functioning perfectly. Satellite links, radio, internet connectivity, yet there were no signals being received from anywhere in the world. It was as if the entire communications network was operational, but completely devoid of users. Reynolds tried making a call to his ex-wife's number. The call connected but went unanswered. Similarly, calls to emergency services, government agencies, and random numbers all connected but remained unanswered. "We need to head to the nearest land," Captain Walsh decided after they had conducted a thorough search of the vessel. "If something happened, we'll find answers there." Using the ship's automated systems, they charted a course to the nearest major port, San Francisco, approximately 2 days' journey at full speed. Throughout the voyage, they continued attempts to establish contact with anyone, anywhere, receiving nothing but silence in return. That night, as the others tried to rest, Reynolds stood alone on the deck, watching the unnaturally still ocean. The stars above seemed too bright, too perfectly arranged. Occasionally he noticed the same shimmering in the water that they had observed during their ascent, brief flashes of bioluminescence that didn't match any known marine phenomenon. Dr. Volkov joined him at the railing. "You should try to sleep, James." "I keep thinking about that structure," he replied. "What was it? Who built it?" "Perhaps it wasn't built at all," she suggested. "Perhaps it grew." Reynolds turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "Nature creates structures too. Coral reefs, termite mounds, beehives. But those are the result of countless small actions by simple organisms. What if the structure we found was created by something different? Something that exists beyond our understanding of biology?" Before Reynolds could respond, a sharp pain lanced through his head, accompanied by a brief flash of images. Dark water, pulsing lights, shadowy forms moving with purpose. From Dr. Volkov's sudden intake of breath, he knew she had experienced something similar. "We brought something back with us," she whispered. "Didn't we?" Reynolds had no answer, but the throbbing behind his eyes intensified as he stared out at the occasionally shimmering water. As they approached the California coastline on the morning of the second day, the first signs of civilization came into view, and with them more questions than answers. The harbour was filled with vessels of all sizes, from small fishing boats to massive cargo ships, all appearing perfectly intact and operational. But like the Oceanic Pioneer, they were completely deserted. They docked without incident, the automated systems of the harbour seemingly functioning as normal. The city skyline stood against the clear sky, showing no signs of destruction or calamity, just an unnatural stillness that was visible even from a distance. "We should split into two groups," Captain Walsh suggested as they prepared to disembark. "Reynolds, Volkov and I will head into the city centre. Marcus, Parker and Lou secure the ship and continue monitoring for any communications." "I don't think we should separate," Dr. Lou objected. "Whatever happened here, we should stay together." Reynolds considered her concern. "Liu's right, we have no idea what we're walking into. We'll all go, but we'll secure the ship first." After ensuring the Oceanic Pioneer was properly docked and its system set to maintenance mode, the team made their way into the city. The dock area was eerily pristine. No signs of panic or evacuation. Just an absence of human presence that became more disturbing with each empty security booth and abandoned customs office they passed. The city streets presented a surreal landscape of emptiness. Cars parked neatly or stopped at traffic lights that still cycled through their red, yellow-green pattern. Store windows displayed their merchandise, some with lights still illuminating perfect arrangements. A cafe they passed had tables set with meals untouched, as if the diners had simply stood up and walked away mid-bite. "The power grid is still functioning," Dr. Volkov noted, gesturing to the working traffic lights and illuminated buildings. "And the water system," Marcus added, pointing to a decorative fountain still spraying water in perfect arcs. They made their way to a police station, hoping to find some explanation. Inside, computer screens still displayed information, radios still crackled with static, but no officers were present. A bulletin board caught Reynolds' attention, a map of the city with various locations circled in red marker. A date from 3 weeks ago written boldly across the top. "Look at this," he called to the others. "These markings began the day after we descended. They spread outward from the harbour over the course of several days." "Like they were tracking something," Captain Walsh observed, "or someone." Dr. Volkov had found a working television in the break room and turned it on. Every channel showed the same thing. Empty studios, cameras recording nothing but vacant sets, automated programs running without human hosts. "This isn't just the city," she said quietly. "I think it's everywhere." They found a government emergency management center in the basement of a federal building. Unlike the other locations they'd explored, this one showed signs of frantic activity, papers scattered, equipment hastily deployed, and most telling, a series of screens displaying global data. They were monitoring something worldwide, Reynolds said, examining the information. Ocean anomalies reported simultaneously across every major body of water, starting in the Mariana Trench and spreading outward. Captain Walsh found a partially corrupted video file and managed to play it on one of the still-functioning computers. The footage showed a crowded emergency operations center filled with military and scientific personnel. A woman in a lab coat was speaking urgently to the camera. The phenomenon continues to spread. We've documented over 2,000 cases now. It doesn't appear to be a disease in the traditional sense. People aren't dying, they're changing. The process begins with neurological symptoms, similar to those reported by the Oceanic Pioneer crew before contact was lost. Then, the video corrupted briefly before continuing. Transformation accelerates rapidly after that. We're implementing quarantine protocols, but it's spreading too quickly. The changed individuals appear to retain some level of intelligence and coordination. They're gathering near bodies of water and... The video ended abruptly, leaving them in stunned silence. The crew of the Oceanic Pioneer, Dr. Volkov whispered. They experienced the same symptoms we did after contact with the structure. But we recovered, Reynolds pointed out. We're still... us. Are we? Captain Walsh asked quietly. Have you noticed the headaches getting worse? The moments of lost time? The strange dreams? Before anyone could respond, Parker suddenly clutched his head, crying out in pain. Blood trickled from his nose as he collapsed to his knees. The others rushed to help him, but as they reached his side, he looked up with eyes that had taken on a faint bioluminescent glow. I can hear them, he whispered, his voice carrying strange harmonics that seemed impossible for human vocal cords to produce. So many voices, in the water, calling. David, stay with us, Reynolds urged, gripping the communications officer by the shoulders. Fight it! Parker's eyes briefly cleared, terror evident in his expression. They came from the structure. It changed them first, our ship's crew, then coastal populations, spreading person to person like some kind of psychic virus. The change is physical and mental. We're all infected, but some change faster than others. His voice became strained. I can feel myself slipping, Doctor. You have to... His words cut off as he convulsed, his body going rigid before collapsing unconscious. Dr. Liu quickly checked his vital signs. He's alive, but his pulse is erratic and his skin temperature is rising rapidly. We need to get him back to the ship, Reynolds decided. The medical bay is better equipped than anything we can access here. As they carried Parker back through the deserted streets, Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Occasionally, from the corner of his eye, he thought he glimpsed movement shadowy figures, ducking into doorways or slipping around corners, but whenever he turned to look directly, nothing was there. Back aboard the Oceanic Pioneer, they took Parker to the medical bay and connected him to the monitoring equipment. Dr. Liu conducted a more thorough examination, drawing blood samples for analysis. His cellular structure is changing, she reported, looking through a microscope at the fresh sample. It's similar to the samples we found in the lab, but the transformation seems to be accelerating. Can you stop it? Captain Walsh asked. Dr. Liu shook her head. I don't even understand what it is. This isn't a virus or bacteria or any known pathogen. It's as if his DNA itself is being rewritten. Reynolds felt the throbbing behind his eyes intensify as he watched Parker's unconscious form. The same images flashed through his mind. Dark water, pulsing lights, coordinated movement. But this time they were accompanied by a sense of purpose, as if these weren't just random hallucinations, but communications. "We need to check ourselves," he said suddenly. "If Parker is changing, we might be too." The medical examinations revealed subtle changes in all of them. Slightly elevated body temperatures, minor alterations in blood chemistry, and most concerning, faint bioluminescent patterns visible beneath their skin under ultraviolet light. "It's happening to us too," Dr. Volkov confirmed, "just more slowly." Reynolds studied his own blood sample under a microscope. "There's something different about my cellular structure compared to the rest of you." He thought back to their descent. "Before the mission, I was taking an experimental anti-pressure medication developed by a colleague. It alters how cells respond to extreme environmental changes." "That might explain your increased resistance," Marcus suggested. "But that doesn't help the rest of us." As night fell, they observed distant lights moving in the water of the harbour. Hundreds of bioluminescent forms swimming in coordinated patterns. More disturbing were the shadowy figures they occasionally glimpsed moving through the city streets, their movements fluid yet somehow wrong. "They're coming for us," Marcus whispered, watching from the bridge windows. "The ones that stayed behind." Parker regained consciousness shortly after midnight, but it was immediately clear that he was no longer fully himself. His eyes glowed with bioluminescence, and his speech contained the same strange harmonics they had heard earlier. "You cannot stop it," he told them, his voice eerily calm. "The transformation has begun. The catalyst awakened when you touched it, and now Earth returns to its original state." "What do you mean, original state?" Reynolds asked. Parker's lips curved into an unnatural smile. "Before the land dwellers, before the air breathers, when all life belonged to the deep, we are returning to our primordial form." "Who is we?" Captain Walsh demanded. "Humanity?" "Humanity is just the current vessel," Parker replied. "Life adapts, the forms change, the essence remains." Dr. Liu approached Parker cautiously. "David, are you still in there? Do you remember who you are?" Something flickered in Parker's glowing eyes, a brief moment of recognition. "Rebecca, I'm still here, but I'm also more. I can feel the others now, their thoughts, their purpose. It's beautiful." He reached out to touch her face, his movements unnaturally fluid. "You'll understand soon. You're almost ready." Dr. Liu stepped back, disturbed by the change in her colleague. "Ready for what?" "To join the collective, to return to the water." Parker's gaze shifted to Reynolds. "You're fighting it harder than the others. The substance in your blood. It slows the process, but it cannot stop it. Nothing can..." With sudden, inhuman strength, Parker broke free from his restraints and lunged toward the door. Captain Walsh and Marcus attempted to block his path, but Parker moved with impossible speed, easily evading their grasp. He reached the doorway, then paused, turning back to face them with an expression of alien serenity. "Don't follow me," he warned, his voice resonating strangely in the confined space. "Stay here if you wish, but know that they're coming. Those who have already transformed will seek out those in transition. It's part of the process." Before anyone could respond, Parker was gone, moving through the ship with preternatural agility. By the time they reached the main deck, they could see his form diving gracefully into the dark harbour waters, disappearing beneath the surface with barely a ripple. "We need to secure the ship," Captain Walsh ordered, his military training asserting itself despite the unprecedented situation. "Seal all external access points." As they worked to lock down the vessel, Reynolds noticed Dr. Liu staring fixedly at the water where Parker had disappeared. Her eyes had taken on a subtle luminescent quality in the darkness. "Rebecca," he said cautiously, touching her shoulder. She startled at the contact, turning to him with momentary confusion before her expression cleared. "I could hear them for a moment," she whispered, when David jumped. It was like a chorus of voices welcoming him home. Dr. Volkov appeared at Reynolds' side, her scientific detachment visibly strained. The transformation seems to progress at different rates in each of us. David changed first, and based on my observations, Rebecca appears to be next, followed by myself, then Marcus and the captain. And me last, Reynolds finished for her, because of the medication. We need a plan, Captain Walsh said firmly. We can't just wait here to be converted. Reynolds nodded in agreement. We need more information. The data we found at the Emergency Management Center was incomplete. There must be research facilities in the city that were studying this phenomenon before everyone disappeared. The University of California has a major marine biology research center here, Dr. Liu suggested, seeming to temporarily overcome the influence affecting her. If anyone was studying these changes, they would have been... It's worth investigating, Reynolds agreed. But we need to move quickly before any more of us change. They spent the rest of the night preparing, gathering supplies, weapons, and communication equipment. Reynolds noticed that their moments of mental clarity were becoming interspersed with periods of disorientation and shared hallucinations. Several times he caught himself staring at the water, feeling an inexplicable longing that he had to consciously suppress. By dawn, they were ready to venture back into the city. The university campus was approximately 5 miles inland, a deliberate choice to put some distance between themselves and the water that seemed to accelerate their transformations. As they made their way through the empty streets, the eerie beauty of the abandoned city became more apparent in daylight. Nature was already beginning to reclaim urban spaces, vines growing with unnatural speed up the sides of buildings, flowers blooming in sidewalk cracks, birds and small mammals moving through areas typically dominated by human activity. The ecosystem is changing too, Dr. Volkov observed, examining a flowering plant that had grown several feet up a lamppost. The transformation isn't limited to humans. They encountered their first transformed human near the city centre, a figure standing motionless in a plaza fountain, its body partially submerged in the recycling water. From a distance, it appeared almost normal, but as they cautiously approached, the differences became apparent. The skin had taken on a faintly translucent quality, with intricate patterns of bioluminescence visible beneath the surface. The eyes glowed with the now familiar blue indigo light, and when it turned to look at them, its movements were fluid and graceful, in a way that no human body should be capable of. "Stay back," Captain Walsh warned, raising the rifle he had taken from the police station. The transformed human made no aggressive moves, merely watching them with an unnerving stillness. When it finally spoke, its voice carried the same harmonic qualities as Parker's had. "You resist unnecessarily," it said. "The change brings clarity, unity, purpose." "What happened to the person you were before?" Reynolds asked. "I am still myself," the figure replied, "but also part of something larger. The barriers between individual minds dissolve, but the essence remains." "What do you want from us?" Marcus asked, his voice betraying his fear. "Nothing. Everything proceeds as it must. Those who resist longest will eventually embrace the change, or they will die in transition. Either way, the transformation of Earth continues." Without another word, the figure submerged itself fully in the fountain, its form seeming to melt into the water in a way that defied physical explanation. Within seconds, the fountain appeared empty, though the water continued to shimmer with faint bioluminescence. "Did it dissolve?" Marcus asked incredulously. "No," Dr. Volkov replied, her eyes transfixed on the fountain. "It transformed further, became one with the water somehow." They continued toward the university, encountering more transformed humans along the way. Some simply observed them from a distance, while others attempted to communicate, sharing fragments of what seemed to be a collective consciousness that was spreading throughout the changed population. All spoke of the catalyst, the structure they had discovered in the Mariana Trench, as something ancient and purposeful that had awakened to guide Earth's life into a new evolutionary phase. Dr. Liu's condition deteriorated noticeably during their journey. Her eyes glowed more intensely, and she frequently paused, cocking her head as if listening to voices only she could hear. Reynolds stayed close to her, concerned that she might succumb entirely to the transformation before they reached their destination. The university campus was as deserted as the rest of the city, but showed signs of having been converted into a research centre focused on the phenomenon. Laboratories contained hastily assembled equipment, and walls were covered with charts tracking the spread of the transformation across global populations. In what had once been the marine biology department, they found a comprehensive research archive. Scientists had been documenting the changes from the earliest cases, beginning with the crew of the Oceanic Pioneer, who had returned to port 3 weeks earlier reporting a successful mission but exhibiting strange behaviour. "This doesn't make sense," Reynolds said, examining the reports. "According to these records, the Abyss Walker returned to the surface 3 weeks ago, with all crew members showing early signs of transformation. But that wasn't us, we just surfaced yesterday." Dr. Volkov reviewed the documentation. "There are photographs here of the crew being examined upon their return. Look." The images showed people who were clearly meant to be them, the expedition members, but with subtle differences. It was as if someone had created nearly perfect duplicates of each crew member, with only minor details incorrect. "These aren't us," Captain Walsh stated the obvious, "but they returned in our submersible, using our names." The structure, Reynolds realized. It must have created duplicates somehow, copies sent back to the surface while we remained in some kind of stasis at the bottom of the trench. "And these duplicates began the transformation process," Marcus continued, following the logic, "spreading it to the rest of humanity." Dr. Liu, who had been silent for some time, suddenly spoke. "Not duplicates, echoes. The structure exists outside normal space-time. What you're seeing is what would have happened if our original descent had proceeded differently." Her voice had taken on the harmonic quality they now associated with the transformed. "In another timeline, perhaps that is exactly what occurred." Reynolds turned to her, alarmed by the change in her speech pattern. "Rebecca, are you still with us?" She smiled distantly. "For now, but the calling grows stronger. The water beckons." They continued examining the research materials, discovering that scientists had identified changes in Earth's oceans, corresponding to the spread of the transformation among humans. Water chemistry was altering on a global scale, becoming more similar to what had existed billions of years earlier in Earth's development. Marine life was evolving rapidly, with new species appearing that combined aspects of existing organisms with novel features never before documented. Most concerning was evidence that the transformation was indeed irreversible once it progressed beyond a certain point. Attempts to cure affected individuals had universally failed, with test subjects either completing their transformation or dying in the process. "There's one piece of good news," Marcus said, reviewing pharmaceutical research notes. "They were developing a compound to slow the transformation, based on the same pressure medication Dr. Reynolds was taking." "Did they succeed?" Captain Walsh asked. "Partially. They managed to create a stabilizing agent that could significantly delay the neurological aspects of the change, though the physical alterations would continue gradually." Reynolds quickly located the laboratory where this research had taken place. Fortunately, several doses of the completed formula remained in a refrigerated storage unit. They each injected the stabilizing agent, hoping it would buy them time to formulate a plan. "This won't stop what's happening to us," Reynolds warned, "but it should help us maintain our autonomy and mental clarity for longer." As night fell, they decided to remain at the university, rather than risk travelling back to the harbour in darkness. They secured a faculty lounge with only one entrance, and took turns keeping watch, though all of them struggled with increasingly vivid hallucinations. visions of deep water, ancient creatures, and the pulsing energy of the catalyst structure. During his watch, Reynolds found himself drawn to a large aquarium in the corner of the room. The fish inside exhibited signs of the transformation's subtle bioluminescence and behavior patterns that seemed too coordinated to be natural. As he watched their synchronized movements, he realized they were forming patterns similar to what they had seen on the structure, deep in the trench. Dr. Volkov joined him, unable to sleep. "They're communicating," she observed. "The patterns are a language." "Can you understand it?" Reynolds asked. "Not consciously, but something in me responds to it." She pressed her hand against the glass. "It's beautiful, in its way. A return to the collective consciousness that all life may have shared in Earth's earliest days, but at the cost of individuality, of choice." "Is that truly a cost?" she asked, her eyes reflecting the bioluminescence from the aquarium. "Or is our isolation from one another, our sense of separation, the real evolutionary misstep? Perhaps the catalyst is merely correcting a wrong turn that life on Earth took long ago." Reynolds had no answer for her. The philosophical implications were too vast to grasp with a mind increasingly influenced by whatever was transforming them. Instead, he checked on the others. Captain Walsh slept fitfully, while Marcus worked obsessively on a communication device, attempting to boost its signal strength. Dr. Liu sat cross-legged in a corner, her eyes fully luminescent now, her skin beginning to show the translucent quality they had observed in the transformed humans. She no longer spoke much, but when she did, her words were increasingly cryptic, references to the deep calling and rejoining the original flow. By morning, they faced a difficult decision. The stabilizing agent had helped maintain their mental cohesion, but Dr. Liu's transformation had progressed to a point where she could barely function as part of the team. She moved toward water whenever possible and had begun to develop what appeared to be early-stage gill structures along her neck. "We can't stay here," Captain Walsh insisted. "We need to find a solution, not just delay the inevitable." "What do you propose?" Dr. Volkov asked. "We know the source of this transformation, the structure in the Mariana Trench. If we want to stop this, that's where we need to go." "Back to the catalyst?" Marcus asked incredulously. "That's what started this in the first place." "Exactly," Walsh replied, "and it might be the only thing that can end it. If this is some kind of evolutionary trigger, perhaps it can be reset or disabled." Reynolds considered the idea. It seemed simultaneously foolhardy and logical. Returning to the source might indeed provide answers, but it could also accelerate their transformation, or worse. "The Oceanic Pioneer and Abyss Walker are still fully operational," he said slowly. "We could make the journey. But Dr. Liu is in no condition to travel, and I'm concerned about the rest of us maintaining enough control to complete such a mission." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Dr. Liu suddenly spoke from her corner. "The catalyst calls all," she said, a voice layered with harmonics. "But it doesn't command, it offers. Those who fully embrace the change become part of humanity's new chapter. Those who resist," she gestured vaguely, "remain between states, neither transformed nor unchanged." "Rebecca?" Reynolds approached her cautiously. "Are you saying there's a choice?" Her luminescent eyes focused on him with momentary clarity. "Always a choice, but not all paths lead forward." She reached out to touch his face with fingers that had begun to develop translucent webbing. "You resist most strongly. Your essence remains most human. But you cannot stop what's coming. No one can. The only choice is how you meet it." With sudden decisiveness, she rose to her feet and moved toward the door. Captain Walsh stepped to block her path, but Reynolds called him off. "Let her go," he said quietly. "She's made her choice." They watched through the windows as Dr. Liu made her way across the campus, moving with increasingly fluid grace towards a decorative pond at the center of a courtyard. Without hesitation, she immersed herself in the water. Unlike Parker's dramatic dive into the harbor, her transition was peaceful. A gentle submersion followed by a soft glow that spread throughout the pond before fading. "We've lost another one," Marcus said grimly. "No," Dr. Volkov corrected him. "She isn't lost. She's transformed. There's a difference." Reynolds turned away from the window, his resolve hardening. "Captain Walsh is right. Our answers lie at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. We need to return to the catalyst." They gathered what useful research materials and supplies they could find, and began the journey back to the harbour. The city seemed different now, more alive with the evidence of transformation. Plants grew with visible speed. Animals exhibited novel behaviours and physical characteristics, and the transformed humans moved through streets and buildings with purposeful coordination. Several times they were approached by these changed beings, but no attempt was made to stop or harm them. It was as if their status as transitioning individuals granted them a kind of neutral status, neither fully part of the new order nor enemies to be converted. Near the harbour, they encountered a large gathering of transformed humans. Hundreds stood in concentric circles around a central figure who appeared more dramatically changed than the others, nearly translucent with elaborate bioluminescent patterns flowing constantly across its body. When it spoke, the harmonics in its voice were so complex they seemed to form a kind of music. "The final phase approaches," it announced to the assembled transformed. "The waters rise, the land recedes. Soon all will return to the embrace of the deep." Reynolds and the others observed from a distance, trying to understand what this meant. As if sensing their presence, the central figure turned toward their hiding place, its luminescent eyes seeing through the darkness with ease. "The resistant ones," it said, its voice carrying easily to them. "You seek answers in the depths. Go, the catalyst awaits your return." The gathered, transformed parted, creating a clear path to the harbour, where the oceanic pioneer remained docked. It was an explicit invitation, or perhaps a challenge. "They want us to go back," Marcus whispered. "Or they want us away from here when whatever final phase they're planning begins," Captain Walsh countered. Reynolds considered their options, which were rapidly dwindling. "Either way, the Mariana Trench is still our best hope. Let's go." They made their way to the ship, finding it untouched since their departure. The automated systems remained operational, and with the three of them working together, they were able to prepare for the long journey back to the coordinates where they had first discovered the catalyst. As they pulled away from the dock, Reynolds observed hundreds of transformed humans gathering at the water's edge, some fully submerging, while others merely watched their departure. The harbour waters glowed with bioluminescence, creating patterns that seemed to ripple outward in perfect synchronization with the movements of the transformed. Once they were underway, Reynolds retreated to the ship's laboratory to study the blood samples they had collected from themselves over the past day. The progression of cellular changes was unmistakable, though the stabilizing agent had indeed slowed the neurological aspects of the transformation. His own changes remained the least advanced, but even with the medication and additional stabilizing agent, full transformation appeared inevitable, a matter of weeks rather than days. "If we can't stop this," he murmured to himself, "perhaps we can at least understand it, direct it somehow." Dr. Volkov entered the lab, her movements already showing the increased fluidity characteristic of the transformed. "You still think like a scientist," she observed, seeking to control what might be better embraced. "Is that what you're doing? Embracing it?" "I'm studying it from the inside," she replied. "There's a beauty to this transformation that's difficult to explain. The boundaries between self and other become permeable. Thoughts flow between minds like water between connecting vessels." "You're experiencing the collective consciousness?" She nodded. Fragments. Whispers. It grows stronger when I'm near water or other transformed individuals. She hesitated. James, what if this isn't an invasion or a disaster? What if it's simply the next step? Evolution has always been driven by adaptation to changing environments. Perhaps humanity's time as land dwellers is simply reaching its natural conclusion. That should be a choice, Reynolds insisted, not something forced upon billions without their consent. Was it a choice when our distant ancestors left the oceans, or when they later developed intelligence, civilization, technology? Evolution rarely asks permission. Their philosophical debate was interrupted by Captain Walsh calling them to the bridge. "You need to see this," he said grimly when they arrived. On the radar and satellite imagery, they could see massive changes occurring along coastlines worldwide. Sea levels appeared to be rising at an impossible rate. Not the gradual increase associated with climate change, but a dramatic surge that had already submerged significant portions of coastal cities. This must be the final phase they mentioned, Reynolds realized. The oceans are expanding. Not just expanding, Dr. Volkov said, examining the data more closely. Changing composition. The water chemistry is altering on a global scale, becoming more similar to Earth's primordial oceans. How is this possible? Marcus asked, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Water doesn't just appear from nowhere. The planet has a fixed amount. Unless it doesn't, Reynolds said slowly, a terrible realization forming. What if the catalyst isn't just transforming life? What if it's transforming the entire planet, reverting it to an earlier state when the oceans covered much more of the surface? The ice caps, Dr. Volkov suggested, if they're melting at an accelerated rate? No, Reynolds shook his head. Even complete melting wouldn't cause this level of ocean expansion this quickly. This is something else, something we don't understand. The journey to the Mariana Trench coordinates took 9 days. Throughout the voyage, they monitored the global transformation with increasing concern. By the 5th day, satellite imagery showed nearly 40% of Earth's previously dry land submerged beneath the rising oceans. Major cities had been abandoned, or rather, embraced by the transformed populations, who now thrived in the new aquatic environment. More troubling were the changes they observed in themselves. Marcus was the next to succumb, his transformation accelerating rapidly during their 7th day at sea. Unlike Parker and Lou before him, he did not fight the change or dramatically exit. Instead, he simply informed Reynolds and Walsh that he could no longer resist the calling. "I can hear them all now," he explained, his eyes glowing brightly in the ship's dim evening lighting. Billions of minds connected, sharing knowledge, purpose, existence itself. It's not a loss, James. It's an expansion. He turned to Captain Walsh. "You'll understand soon. You're nearly there." That night, Reynolds helped Marcus lower himself into the ocean from the ship's stern. There was a moment of farewell, a final handshake between colleagues, before Marcus slipped beneath the waves, a brief flash of bioluminescence marking his integration into the transformed ecosystem. Only Reynolds and Captain Walsh remained now, both fighting the transformation through sheer willpower and the dwindling supply of stabilizing agent. Walsh's condition deteriorated more rapidly, his military discipline waging a losing battle against the neurological changes. By the time they approached the coordinates of the catalyst, he could barely maintain focus on operating the ship. "You'll have to complete the mission alone," Walsh told Reynolds, as they prepared the Abyss Walker for its 2nd descent. "I won't be able to pilot the submersible in my condition." "We came this far together," Reynolds insisted. "We'll finish it together." Using the ship's automated systems to maintain position, they boarded the Abyss Walker and began pre-descent checks. The submersible had been repaired and maintained by the transformed crew after its initial journey, making it fully operational despite the trauma it had endured. As they completed their preparations, Captain Walsh suddenly froze, his eyes fixed on something visible only to him. "They're waiting for us," he whispered. "The catalyst has evolved since our last visit." "What do you mean?" Reynolds asked. "It's aware of us specifically now. Our resistance intrigues it." Walsh's eyes began to glow more intensely. "It wants to understand why we fight what others have embraced." The descent began in silence, the submersible plunging once more into the abyssal darkness of the Mariana Trench. Unlike their first journey, the bioluminescent patterns appeared almost immediately, guiding their path downward with unmistakable purpose. Captain Walsh operated the controls with increasing difficulty, his transforming body struggling to interface with human technology. Reynolds took over many of the functions, though he too found his attention constantly drawn to the mesmerizing patterns outside the viewports. 30,000 feet, Reynolds announced, monitoring their depth. The structure should be visible soon. When the catalyst finally came into view, both men stared in awe at how dramatically it had changed. What had been an isolated architectural anomaly had expanded into what could only be described as an underwater metropolis. Spires reached higher, interconnected pathways spread for miles, and thousands of transformed humans swam among the structures without any apparent need for breathing equipment. "My God," Reynolds whispered. "They've been building." "Not building," Walsh corrected, his voice now carrying the harmonic qualities of the transformed. "Growing. The catalyst grows as more join with it. Each transformed mind adds to its complexity." At the center of it all, the original structure pulsed with intense energy, its rhythmic patterns matching the headaches that now constantly plagued both men. As the submersible approached, transformed humans moved aside, creating a path to what appeared to be a docking area specifically designed for their vessel. "They're inviting us in," Reynolds observed. "No," Walsh replied, his gaze fixed on the structure. "They're welcoming us home." They guided the Abyss Walker to the indicated docking area, where it was secured by mechanisms that seemed to grow organically from the structure itself. As the external pressure stabilized, Reynolds was shocked to realize they would be able to exit the submersible directly into the structure without special diving equipment. Somehow the environment within had been adapted to allow transitioning humans to survive. "This is as far as I go with you," Captain Walsh said as they prepared to disembark. His transformation had accelerated dramatically in proximity to the catalyst, his skin now visibly translucent, elaborate bioluminescent patterns flowing beneath the surface. "I can't resist any longer, James, and truthfully, I no longer wish to." Reynolds gripped his colleague's shoulder. "I understand. Thank you for getting us here." Walsh's eyes, now fully luminescent, met Reynolds' gaze one last time. "What will you do?" "What I came to do, understand, and then decide." As they exited the submersible, Walsh was immediately greeted by a group of transformed humans who welcomed him into their midst. His final glance back at Reynolds held no regret, only a strange peace, as he was guided deeper into the structure, his body already adapting to its new environment with remarkable speed. Reynolds stood alone now, the last fully conscious human at the bottom of the world. The catalyst pulsed before him, offering transformation. The changed humans watched from all sides, waiting for his decision. A figure approached, familiar despite its transformed state. Dr. Liu, now fully adapted to the deep-sea environment, her form elegant and powerful in its new configuration. "You returned," her voice somehow carried through the water, resonating directly in his mind. As the catalyst predicted. "I came to understand," Reynolds replied, surprised to find he could communicate the same way. "No," Liu corrected, "you came to choose." She gestured towards the pulsing heart of the structure. "The catalyst does not force. It offers. Those who fully embrace the change become part of humanity's new chapter, those who resist. She gestured to several human-like forms, encased in translucent membranes at the structure's base, suspended in a state between human and something else, neither transformed nor returned to their original state. "What is it?" Reynolds asked, his resistance visibly weakening as the call of the catalyst grew stronger. "What is this thing?" "It has always been here," Liu explained, "dormant since Earth's earliest days, waiting for a species to reach the potential for the next evolutionary leap. When you touched it, you awakened it from its slumber. And the duplication, the versions of us that returned to the surface while we remained here. Time works differently within the catalyst's influence. What you experienced as hours, the world experienced as weeks. The duplicates were not copies but projections, aspects of yourselves sent ahead to prepare the way." Reynolds approached the central chamber, where the energy pulsed most intensely. "And if I reject this evolution?" "Then you join those who could not decide," Liu said simply, indicating the suspended forms. "Neither part of the old world nor the new." Reynolds stood at the threshold of decision. In his mind he saw what humanity had been, its triumphs and failures, its beauty and cruelty. He saw what humanity might become, adapted to the vast oceans, evolved beyond individual limitations, connected in ways previously unimaginable. "I need to know one thing," Reynolds said to Liu. "Will anything of what we will remain, our memories, our individuality, our capacity for choice?" "Everything essential remains," she assured him. "We are not erased, merely expanded." Reynolds took a step toward the catalyst, then hesitated. A third option occurred to him, neither full transformation nor eternal suspension. With his unique resistance, perhaps he could chart a middle path, retaining his humanity while adapting enough to survive in both worlds. "I choose to remember," he said finally, "to be the bridge between what was and what will be." He placed his hand against the pulsing core of the catalyst. Energy flowed through him, changing him, but differently than the others. His transformation was selective, controlled by his own will, and the unique properties of the medication in his system. As the changes stabilized, Reynolds found himself altered, but still fundamentally himself, adapted to survive in the depths, but retaining his human consciousness and independence. Liu approached him, curiosity evident in her transformed features. "You've done something unexpected. The catalyst has accepted your choice." "Someone needs to remember what we were," Reynolds explained, "to ensure that what we become doesn't lose the essence of humanity." Around them, the underwater city continued to grow, built by thousands of transformed humans, now perfectly adapted to the crushing depths. Above on the surface, the remaining humans would either join them or find their own path to adaptation. Reynolds looked upward towards the distant surface where a small percentage of the planet's land still remained above the expanding oceans. He would return there sometimes to witness the changing world, to record what was lost and what was gained. But he would also descend again, to learn from what humanity was becoming. He thought briefly of his daughter Ellie, hoping she'd embrace the transformation without fear. Someday he would find her among the billions of connected minds, and share with her the story of how humanity both ended and began anew. In the heart of the Mariana Trench, at the edge of human experience, the next chapter of Earth's dominant species had begun. Not with destruction, but with transformation. Not with an ending, but with an evolution. And one man remained to tell the tale of how a deep-sea mission had returned to find Earth empty, not because humanity had vanished, but because it had transcended, leaving behind only the hollow shells of its former existence as it embraced a new reality beneath the waves. 1 year later, Reynolds swam through the transformed waters of what had once been San Francisco Bay. His partially transformed body moved easily through the altered ocean, his enhanced vision perfectly adapted to see both in the depths and in the remaining air above the surface. The world had changed dramatically in the year since he had made his choice at the catalyst. Over 80% of Earth's landmass now lay beneath the expanded oceans, with only the highest elevations remaining as islands in a planet-spanning sea. The atmosphere had shifted too, becoming richer in oxygen, and certain trace elements that supported the new ecosystem emerging across the globe. Humanity had almost entirely transformed, with only a few thousand traditionalists remaining in their original form, living on specially constructed floating cities maintained through an unspoken agreement with the transformed majority. Reynolds moved between these worlds, not fully belonging to either, but serving as an essential bridge between them. He approached a massive structure that rose from the ocean floor, a new kind of city built by the transformed humans. Unlike the angular, artificial constructions of pre-transformation civilization, this living city grew organically, its architecture incorporating elements of coral, mollusk shell, and crystalline formations in a blend of biology and geometry that would have been impossible before. Swimming through an arched entrance, he was greeted by a familiar presence, the collective consciousness that had once been Captain Morgan Walsh, now distributed across multiple transformed bodies that functioned as a single entity while maintaining aspects of his original personality. "James," the Walsh collective acknowledged him. "Welcome back." "I've returned from the traditional settlements," Reynolds explained. "They've agreed to the knowledge exchange, their technology for our biological insights." "Excellent. The consensus believes cooperation benefits all, even those who choose to remain separate." The consensus, the loosely organized collective mind of transformed humanity, had evolved significantly since the early days of transformation. Rather than the simple hive mind that Reynolds had feared, it had developed into a complex network that preserved individual identity while allowing unprecedented levels of collaboration and shared experience. "I've also found someone who wishes to see you," Walsh added, gesturing toward a smaller chamber. Reynolds entered the space to find a young woman waiting, her form transformed, but her eyes unmistakably familiar. "Ellie," he breathed, emotions overwhelming him. His daughter, now 19 and fully transformed, approached with the fluid grace characteristic of the new humanity. "Dad, you look different than the others." "I took a middle path," he explained, "neither fully transformed nor unchanged." "The historian," she nodded. "That's what they call you among the consensus. The one who remembers as it was, not just as the collective recalls." They spent hours together, sharing experiences impossible to fully convey in pre-transformation language. Ellie had embraced the change completely, thriving in the new world in ways that filled Reynolds with a complex mixture of pride and wistful loss for the human child she had been. Later, Reynolds swam to the surface, breaking through into the air above what had once been the peak of Nob Hill. The sunset painted the endless ocean with colours more vivid than human eyes had ever perceived them, a beauty made possible by the atmospheric changes of the transformation. He reflected on what had been lost and gained. Cities, nations and borders had dissolved, replaced by fluid communities organised around principles incomprehensible to pre-transformation minds. War, resource, scarcity and many diseases had vanished, while new challenges emerged from the complex dynamics of a partly collective consciousness. The essence of humanity remained: curiosity, creativity, connection, but expressed in forms that would have been unimaginable before the catalyst awoke. Not utopia, but evolution, with all the wonder and loss that true change brings. Reynolds took a deep breath of the enriched air, then dove back beneath the waves, returning to his role as witness and bridge between what humanity had been and what it had become. The historian of Earth's greatest transformation. In the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, the catalyst continued to pulse with energy, neither benevolent nor malicious, but simply fulfilling its ancient purpose, guiding life on Earth to its next expression, as it had done countless times before, and would do countless times again in the long unfolding of planetary evolution. The deep-sea mission had ended, Earth as it was had emptied, and something new now filled the oceans of a transformed world.